Hello, and welcome to the training unit, Walking and Working Surfaces. This covers the requirements in 29 CFR 1910 Subpart D, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Standard. At the end of this training unit, you will be able to understand the requirements for both walking and working surfaces in general industry. You will have some ideas to develop methods to protect workers from falls, slips, and trips on the same elevation and different elevations. And you should be able to remember where to locate the standards in case you need to take a closer look at them and be able to identify when violations exist or where there's risk of a worker being injured because of walkways, aisleways, ladders, scaffolding, or flooring. My name is Theresa Stack, and I have a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Connecticut in Natural Resource Management and Engineering, as well as a Master of Science degree from the University of Washington in Occupational and Environmental Health. I am currently at the University of Montana working towards a doctoral degree in educational leadership. I am a certified safety professional and a certified professional. I am an associate professor at Montana Tech of the University of Montana. I also instruct for the University of Idaho and post-university. My past work experience is primarily with the Department of the Navy as their senior occupational ergonomist, abating safety and health deficiencies found in shore-based Navy activities. I also have a few years' experience as a hazardous material technician cleaning up chemical and oil spills in the environment and was the Madison County Public Health Director for 2 years. And this is a picture of my family. It's one of the reasons why I love to keep people safe at work, because I like coming home to my family as well. So the sections that we'll cover are the general requirements, which include housekeeping, aisles and passageways, covers or openings, and floor loading. We'll talk about guarding of floors or wall openings, fixed industrial stairs, portable ladders, fixed ladders, scaffolding, mobile scaffolding units or ladder stands, and other working surfaces. This particular training unit again covers general industry. If you're in construction, maritime, or shipboard, you will need to reference a different standard. Where there is a break in elevation of 19 inches or more and no ramp, runway, or personal hoist is available, the employer must provide a stairway or a ladder at all work points of access. The general requirements apply to all permanent places of employment except where mining, agriculture is going on, as well as, again, this does not cover construction, maritime, or shipboard. And the general requirements are housekeeping, aisles and passageways, covers and guardrails, and floor loading protection. And nationally, falls are the #1 cause of death, whether that's at home or at work. General requirements. All places of employment shall be kept clean and orderly and in sanitary conditions. This is considered our housekeeping rule. Where there are wet processes, there shall be drains that are maintained so the water or whatever type of materials on the floor drains away. Or you can also use a false floor, which would be an elevated floor to keep people out of walking in wet surfaces. Or you can use mats, as seen in this particular picture, so that people have dry places to stand. And these would be two violations of having our clear passageways. The loading dock is cluttered. You cannot get down the stairs. And in the next part of the standard, we'll see that any stairway that's greater than 88 inches needs a railing down the center. And again, in our second picture, the exitway is being blocked by a door. The exitway door is being blocked by a box. Floors shall be kept free of protruding nails, splinters, holes, or loose floorboards. This includes tiles or broken edging. As you see in the picture of the cement stairs, the edging causes a tripping hazard, as well as the loose or broken floorboard can cause a tripping or slipping hazard, especially if it came dislodged or broke while somebody was standing on top of it. Another common violation that you see, and although it's important to be in compliance, ultimately we're trying to protect people at work from being injured. Other general requirements mean that you need sufficient safe clearances around pieces of equipment. Aisleways and passageways shall be kept clear and in good repair and not have any obstructions across the aisleway that can create a hazard. In this picture, you can see that the ladder is extending out in front of a busy walkway. Somebody can easily walk into that. And although during the day or when the lights are on, you can absolutely see the ladder, think about what would happen in case of a fire and you have lower illumination or maybe no illumination. So it's really important that you have a clear path down your aisleway, especially if it leads to any type of exit. So again, some violations of the standard, or maybe a better way to think about it is, are people likely to slip, trip, or fall in these work environments? General requirements for aisleways is permanent aisles and passageways shall be appropriately marked. So you can see in the picture of the storage area, the storage of material is in one zone. There's a yellow marking, which means that people and equipment will pass by in the other zone. Even better picture is our repair facility, in which the repair process is going on in one zone and the vehicles are in another zone. Just a good rule for safety and health is you try to separate people from equipment as much as possible. If possible, in completely separate moving areas, then they don't come into contact with one another. It is also unlawful to overload a floor. The picture is an example of where they had more people on the floor than should have been. They had also started to jump in unison, and a number of people died when they fell through the floor. So a lot of times you'll see this in the workplace where you have mezzanines, places where equipment or materials are stored on an upper deck, and there should be a sign there which clearly lists how many pounds per square foot can be placed in that area to be sure that the floor is not overloaded. Wall openings that are 30 inches high and or 18 inches wide in any direction, in which a person may fall 4 feet, shall be guarded. And they can be guarded by a rail, a half door, or some kind of equivalent barrier. So the 4 foot is a rule for general industry. If people can fall 4 feet or more, we need to have some kind of barricade here. This picture is a great example of where somebody can open the door, walk out, and step into thin air. Wall openings. As a knowledge check, can you list 3 requirements to consider to avoid walking and working hazards related to floors and aisleways? Aisles should be kept clear and clean. Mats shall be used where there are wet processes. You can also use a false floor or an elevated floor. Drains should also be clear so water drains away. Protection from a floor mishap where somebody can trip includes removing loose boards or replacing missed tiles. And if you have people and equipment, there should be a clear path that the people are on to separate them from their equipment. Open-sided floors. This balcony without a rail is a good example of an open-sided floor or platform. If it's 4 or more feet above the ground, it should be guarded on all open sides. The only area in which you do not need to guard an elevated platform is where the ramp or the stairway or the ladder comes in contact with the opening. So some more examples of unguarded edges over 4 feet. Although there is a railing in the photo, it is in disrepair and somebody can fall through it and fall more than 4 feet. And the gentleman walking on the roof, this is an unguarded edge of over 4 feet. And although it isn't his permanent place of employment, he's only up there temporarily, he could easily slip and fall off that edge. He could have put up some kind of barrier, maybe had some caution cones with some tape so he was able to visualize where that edge was, or had a spotter or a second person on site to communicate with him if he's getting too close to the edge. Floor openings of more than 12 inches need to be guarded, not only because somebody can fall through. If it's 12 inches, your foot can fall through it. Also, you can just trip over it, as you see in the open drain in the bar walkway. And this is a little less obvious, but if you have places in which people can step through and fall through, something like a skylight, that needs to be guarded either permanently or while people are up there performing work. So if people regularly access the roof, you can guard the skylights with a rail around it or the screening as you see in this picture. If they go up there occasionally, they can bring some type of portable railing with them to guard from somebody tripping and falling in or falling through the skylight. A little less obvious with the skylights. Floor openings also include that stairway floor openings shall be guarded by a standard railing and a toe board. Railing shall be provided on all sides except where the entrance and the exit way is. So this platform is appropriately guarded by a 42-inch standard railing and a 4-inch toe board. A toe board is that area that you see at the bottom where the toe is, and that also prevents material from being kicked and falling off of the edge of the walkway. Also, floor openings. This is an example you can see in the picture of the person coming off of the roof line, that they cannot easily step off of the roof line, and therefore you don't have a swing gate there. But if the cage did not extend all the way to the top, you would need a swing gate so people can't walk through this opening in the rail. So anytime people walk through a railing, you need to either have an offset, so I step through, step over, and then down the stairs, or a swing gate so I can climb the ladder, walk up onto the roof, but I can't fall back against it. And these are examples of where there's an opening that needs to be guarded. Also, the picture of the stairs coming up, or the ladder coming up the side of the building, is a great example where there's 3 feet of handrail extending past the edge of the roof line so that people have something to grab onto when they're getting on or off of the ladder. And it also has offsets, or places where people can rest in case you have a long climb. So a railing consists of a top rail, an intermediate rail, and posts. The rail should be smooth and not constitute any kind of projectile hazard. The top rail is 42 inches from the ledge, the mid rail is halfway between at 21 inches, and a toe board, although it's not required on stairs as you see it here, you should have at the top of your platform. The standards of 42 inches at the top rail is to prevent forward rotation or somebody bumping up against the rail and tumbling over, and 42 inches is usually below the center of gravity of most people. 99% of the population is 6'6" or shorter, and so if you're shorter than 6'6", that 42 inches will hit you below your center of gravity and you're less likely to topple over. Floor openings on stairs. A handrail is on the wall side of a stair, where a stair rail is on the open side of a stair. And there are some requirements based on whether both sides are open on a stairway or one side is open on a stairway. So if both sides are enclosed, you need a handrail on the right side or the descending side. If one side is open, you need at least one stair rail, that's on the open side. If both sides are open, then of course you need a stair rail on both sides. And if you have a very wide set of stairs, so they're greater than 88 inches, you also need a stair rail down the center. Your stair rail can be lower than 42 inches. It's between 34 and 30 inches from the top surface of the stair. And this is the comfortable gripping position for 50 to 90% of the adult population. This is actually a great example where you see the double handrail and stair rail. Although it is visually pleasing, it also allows children to use it as well as adults, shorter people and taller people, so it accommodates everybody. Examples of a great violation: no stair rails on the stairs that are open on both sides, as well as a compliance with the rules where you have a set of stairs that's greater than 88 inches wide and there's a handrail right down the center. Define the terms floor hole, floor opening, wall opening, and standard railing. A floor hole is a opening that's less than 12 inches but greater than 1 inch, and so materials can fall through and also somebody can trip over it. Where a floor opening is greater than 12 inches and your entire foot can pass through. A wall opening is 30 inches tall by 18 inches wide in its least dimension, and a person may fall through. And a standard railing consists of that top rail, mid rail, and toe board. The standard for fixed industrial stairs applies to interior and exterior tears around machinery, tanks, and equipment, and also around platforms and pits. Again, this does not pertain to fire exits. That's a completely different standard. So this is an example in this picture of a tank that has a well-guarded stairway as well as rest platforms, and your rest platforms need to be a minimum of 30 inches. And fixed industrial stairs with your rest platforms a minimum of 30 inches. You have a stair rail on all exposed sides, and ensure that there's at least a minimum of 7 feet of clearance between the leading edge and the first vertical thing that you'll hit your head up against. So here's an example of where a low overhang means that you do not have enough clearance and somebody will hit their head on either the way up or the way down the stairs. So the angle of the stairway is the difference between the rise and the run, and they should be between 30 degrees and 50 degrees. And the tread length over the tread rise, as long as they're uniform, they will be within the standard. But there's also a table in the 29 CFR 1910.24 standard, which is walking and working surfaces, which gives you the best rise, or how far you'll pick your foot up, over run how deep the stair is based on the angle that the stairs are to the horizon. And again, you can use any combination of rise over run between 6.5 feet and 9.5 feet rise, and between 8 and 11 inches run. Oops, that was inches, not feet. 9.5 inches between 6.5 inches for the rise, and 11 inches and 8 inches for the run, as long as it's uniform throughout its width. So as a point of knowledge check, list 2 requirements for fixed industrial stairs. Fixed industrial stairs need to have a standard railing system in place. The platform is 42 inches at the top, 21 at the mid-rail with a toe board, where the stairway itself, the railing, the stair railing can be between 30 and 24 inches. So there's a difference in requirements between where the railing is if somebody's walking up the stairs versus standing at the top of a platform. And you shall have at least 7 feet of clearance between the leading edge and the first overhead obstruction. So we moved on from platforms and fixed industrial stairs to ladders. And the requirements for wooden and metal ladders are fairly similar. They need to be visually inspected to make sure they're free of sharp edges. If you have a freestanding ladder, as you see in this picture, it should have a metal spreader on it to keep the ladder in place so it stays at that A shape. Uniformity of between the steps of 12 inches, and have at least a minimum of 11.5 inches at the top. So they're usually A-shaped both on the side and frontal view, and the maximum height for a stepladder is 20 feet. Use and care of ladders. This is true whether they be metal ladders or wooden ladders. They should be positioned to prevent sliding or slipping, otherwise they should be lashed or tied down. You never use them in the horizontal position. It means that you don't use them as a runway or a platform. And they shouldn't be placed on boxes or barrels or other unstable objects to gain height. So this is an example of where somebody is likely to be hurt when the ladder falls through the bucket and the person falls down the stairs. Misuse of a ladder. If you're going to lean a ladder up against a roof edge and you're going to access that roof edge either by reaching up onto it or climbing up onto it, the ladder should extend at least 3 feet above that point so that the ladder doesn't slip out. And this is an example of where the ladder is not extending 3 feet over the roof edge, and it is also not lashed down. Metal ladders should have slip-resistant rungs. The feet should be in good condition. Inspect them frequently, and again, they are not to exceed 20 feet. And this is the improper use of a freestanding ladder. A freestanding ladder should be open all the way or closed entirely if it's leaning up against a surface such as a wall. Ladders having defects should be marked out and taken out of service until they're repaired. Portable metal ladders. Portable metal ladders have a 12-inch spacing in between each rung, as well as a minimum of a 12-inch spacing between each side. Single ladders, so that's one single metal ladder, not an extension ladder, should not exceed 30 feet. 2-section ladders should not exceed 48 feet. And over 2-section ladders, so that's a 3-section ladder, should not exceed 60 feet in length. In this picture, the gentleman is using it properly. You cannot see that it's lashed down, but it is. It's tied down to the edge of the roof, and he has a good 3 feet overhang above the roof line so that it creates some stability This also gives you something to hold onto when you're climbing onto or off of the ladder, which is really important. Knowledge check. How many feet should a metal ladder extend over an edge for stability? 3 feet. Fixed ladders can't be moved. The minimum diameter of the rung is 3/4 of an inch. Again, the distance between each rung, you can see how it's the same whether it's a metal, wooden, or fixed ladder. That's 12 inches. Although you need to have 16 inches in width on a fixed ladder, and a minimum of 7 inches in the back so that you have some clearance between the back of the ladder and the first obstruction. If there's a cage around a ladder, and we have cages around ladders that are 24 feet or taller, if you don't have some other type of life protection system in place, the cage needs to be a minimum of 30 inches deep so that it'll catch a person if they fall and they can rest behind it. If your ladder happens to be bolted to cement or concrete, you need to have a yearly inspection to make sure that corrosion hasn't occurred. If your ladder exceeds 24 feet, so you have a 24-foot climb, you need to have some kind of ladder safety device, such as a cage or a self-retracting lifeline. And if people are climbing multiple sections of 24 feet, so that means I'm climbing as tall as 50 feet, I need to have a rest platform at every 50 feet so people can step off and take a break, both so your hands from gripping can take a break as well as your feet from climbing can take a break if you're on a ladder versus a set of stairs. Ladder safety devices may be used on towers, water tanks, and chimney ladders over 24 feet in unbroken length as in lieu of a cage. So that would be a self-retracting lifeline. And in this instance, you don't need to have a landing because you have a landing in place or a platform because you have a way in which somebody can rest against the ladder safety device or their climbing device. Fixed ladders, again, you need to have that 24 inches over the exit point where the cage or the ladder side rails extend so people can climb onto and off of the ladder and not free step through it. As well as for every 50 feet you need to have a platform. And if there is a ladder cage, it should start between 7 and 8 feet above the base of the ladder so people can walk under it and not bump their heads. So safety requirements for scaffolding. What's important to remember about this section is we're not talking about construction. So this would be applicable to a house painter or somebody who's doing repair work inside of your facility and is putting scaffolding up. Unstable objects such as barrels, boxes, loose bricks, or concrete shall not be used to support the scaffolding. A lot of times planks are stacked up on top of each other. This picture shows you some scaffolding that's placed on top of a cement block on snow. And the footing needs to be stable and rigid so it can carry the support of the load that it's upon. For scaffolding that's greater than 25 feet tall, it needs to have diagonal bracing at every 25-foot interval, as well as if the scaffolding is 10 feet or more above the ground, then it needs to have that standard railing system, 42 inches at the top, mid-range 21 inches, and a 4-foot toe board. So cross bracing for every 25 feet and at every 25-foot interval. If we're greater than 10 feet above the ground, we need to have a railing in place. So this is an example of where this scaffolding is greater than 10 feet tall. It does have the diagonal bracing, but there is no top railing around the scaffolding and there is no toe board around the scaffolding. Knowledge check. In this picture lists two considerations for scaffolding, which also include our general requirements. Yes, this work site is a mess for as far as housekeeping goes. There are tools and equipment stored on top of the scaffolding, which is a violation of this particular standard. You shouldn't allow equipment or tools to accumulate on top of scaffolding. And this particular worker was wrongly using an A-frame ladder or a freestanding ladder and leaning it up against the scaffolding to get access up upon it. The scaffolding has ladders built into it that he just didn't bother to put into place. But it should have had a standard top, mid-rail, and toe board. It should be placed on even ground and not allow equipment to accumulate on the top of it. So there are specialty types of scaffolding, and if any one of these apply to your work zone, such as bricklayers, carpenters, or stone setters, outrigger scaffolding, then I urge you to look a little bit closer into the standard and see what the particular requirements are. This is a large list of very specific type of scaffolding that's used in different operations. Again, this is not for construction, that falls under a different standard. We've moved forward now from aisleways, walkways, ladders, as well as scaffolding. Now we're looking at manually propelled ladders or towers. So work platforms is mostly what people get their head around when they think about this, and I'll show you a picture of what they look like. Here's an example of two work platforms. The first picture, these are passive fall protection, which means no worker action is required. And although you can see that there's a gap between the work platform and the helicopter, this particular piece of scaffolding has movable fingers that you move the fingers into position so you don't have that gap. You can see it has the proper guardrail with a 4-inch toe board. And the other picture of the scaffolding on top of the helicopter was placed, the barrier was placed on top of the helicopter, and then it created this guardrail. Again, this is passive worker protection. Here is an example of a mobile work platform. You can see that the stairway where you enter and exit isn't guarded, although all the other edges are guarded upon it. It has casters that you either lock, or when you're standing on it, the weight of the person locks them down in place. And the lower picture is an example of where no fall protection is being used, and the worker should have some fall protection because they're greater than 4 feet above the ground. And this is an example of an aerial lift or a mobile man lift. You can see that scissoring action. Equipment such as this do not fall under this standard. I just want to make that distinction clear. So strategies to avoid injuries. Clean up spills immediately or report them. You can use wet floor signs if the floor is wet until it has been dried. Clean one side of the hallway first, have your wet floor sign. When that dries, then move over to the other side instead of cleaning the whole entire floor at one time. There's different types of slip-resistant coating that you can use on floors that are wet most of the time, such as kitchens or bathing facilities, bathrooms. Sturdy shoes with good traction. Flip-flops don't work so well to prevent slip, trips, and falls. Encourage people to use handrails on walkways and stairs. Never store anything in aisleways and corridors, especially electrical cords draped across a walkway. And replace or repair damaged floor tiles or carpeting so it does not create that tripping hazard. Use ladders as they're intended, so our vertical ladders should not be used as horizontal platforms. You tie off or lash down your extension ladders. Ensure that when you open up an A-frame ladder, the spreader is fully engaged, and inspect regularly and take out of service if they're broken. So our last point of knowledge check, the importance of appropriate awareness and hazard identification so that people don't slip, trip, and fall in the workplace, because ultimately we just want everybody to go home safe and whole at the end of the day. Keep all working areas clean and dry. Aisleways should be clear and free of clutter. Clean up spills and messes immediately, and use signs where the floor is wet as well as elevated mats. As far as the hierarchy of controls goes in occupational safety and health, we engineer out the hazard first, maybe substitute it for something less hazardous, then we use our administrative controls. So signs, they work the least. It's better to just clean up the spill. People don't even see signs so much. If they're up always in one place, we become used to them. Employee education and involvement is important because it's not just about compliance. What these rules and regulations or standards were set into place for is to keep people safe at work from slipping, tripping, or falling. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be safe.